What went wrong in the Saints' 21-14 loss to the Los Angeles Rams? First major loss under Darren Rizzi, first loss of the Rizzi era, but there were also some major L's taken on the field. Taysom Hill, the card had to come out. Nick Saldiveri, the card had to come out. So, besides that, and including that, what went wrong in this loss?
Well, I feel like the first half, I mean, the Saints were moving the ball a little bit, but it kind of felt like both teams were gassed and sucking wind like season 6 Tony Soprano. Like it was just a lot of like laborious activity, and it just really did. It felt like they had no energy, and it looked like both teams just weren't ready to kind of play, especially the Rams in the first half.
Yeah.
Like Stafford looked like he was like drunk on like tryptophan or whatever it is. Like that was a crazy looking first half for him. Just it didn't look like he was locked in. He was out of sorts. He was missing throws.
Yeah, their running backs averaged
were.
like 7 yards a carry in the first half, and they scored 0 points.
Yeah, I don't know what his stats were, but I remember looking at him at halftime like, what the hell? Like this is like an Anthony Richardson stat line at halftime. Like it looked really bad, and he dialed in the second half and looked better. I think Tyron getting hurt helped quite a bit. But that first half, to possess the ball for 19 minutes and to get 6 points, like that felt like a very poor situation for them to be in.
Yeah, look, it was. I wrote my whole thing about. You wrote after the game about the biggest fail of the game, which was their final drive when they ended up with 0 points after they got down near the goal line and couldn't convert on 3rd and 4th down. But that was happening all day. I mean, even the first drive that went 12 plays and they had to convert a 4th down to keep moving the ball still ended in just a 54-yard field goal. They worked that hard for a 54-yard field goal. Next drive, they get down to the 10-yard line, and they have to burn a timeout because they don't have enough men on the field, and then penalty on Fuaga, and then a penalty on Penning, and then a missed field goal. And it's just like all that work, like you say, for 3 points on those first 2 drives. And when they had the ball for 14 of the first 15 minutes of the game, they only led 3-0. It was just like that the whole rest of the game. They were not taking advantage of situations. One deep ball to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. But otherwise, the Saints were playing the kind of game that you have to be perfect. You got to have 12-play drives. You got to make defensive stops. And this is not a perfect team. They can't win games that way. They can't win games that way because eventually the better team prevails when you're trying to play perfectly, and the Rams are the better team on both sides of the ball. The Saints needed tricks up their sleeve. The Saints couldn't just outlast the worst team. They were the worst team.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of my feeling throughout the whole first half is that the way they were playing the game. They aren't a team that can win unless they get big plays. Like they're very big play dependent. They aren't talented enough to go into a game where they're going to be like, okay, we're gonna sustain these drives. We're gonna run 15 plays every single time, and we're gonna do that 5 times in the game, and we're gonna score on 5 drives, and we're gonna win this game. Like that. That's not ever gonna work for them. They just aren't. They simply aren't good enough. And I know. Sometimes they have those drives and they run the ball, and you can have a couple of them, and they need those to be able to set up. But, like, it has to be with the idea of, okay, we're going to run the ball so that we can pull them in and then get a shot play. And if they aren't doing that a couple times a game, like, it feels like they need 2 of them every game to just have a chance to be able to win. And they only got 1 today, and they didn't have that chance to win. And they just aren't good enough to do that. And that's what I was saying. Like, it just felt like so laborious at the beginning of the game is that it was just like, like just so much effort to move down the field, and it didn't work out for them. And they're eating clock, and then they don't score. It just felt like a disastrous game. Really, it did.
Rizzi said it was going according to plan, and that was their plan. He said they wanted to be in 3rd and manageable the whole game, and they were in 3rd and manageable the whole game. But they only went 5 of 15 on 3rd downs. I mean, they were failing on 3rd and 1.
That's a bad plan. You want to be 3rd and manageable, and you get 33%. I mean, that's not a good plan.
Like they thought, okay, we can convert 3rd and 4s, we can convert 3rd and 1s, and they didn't, and they couldn't.
The Rams gave the Saints an entire half to run the score up. The first half, they were like, hey,
this is your half.
Do what you want to do. And then they just didn't. They couldn't. The offensive drives they were having, they couldn't sustain. It got to the point where it was like, let's try to run it. And Alvin was running it. He was running it. He was doing his thing, but it never was turning into points. The one touchdown he would have had come back because of legal man downfield. And later there, you got Penn with the low blow block. So, like, it's a lot of self-inflicted wounds that came up. going looking at Derek Carr, he was 24 of 37 passing for 184 total in the whole game. And Nick, you wrote an article detailing that last drive about how, we all saw it. We all saw it. All our listeners, they're tapped in, so they saw it, so they could read that, get the full breakdown. But I mean, it was right there for them, and they just couldn't do it. And then the whole second half, what are the Rams doing? Force feeding you Kyron Williams. You couldn't do anything with it. And then Honey Badger went out after that. That's all she wrote.
Yeah.
Stafford said, okay, we got it now.
It wasn't a good game for Derek Carr. It wasn't. I mean, there were a couple of plays where I just felt like he didn't manage the pocket as well as he could have. That last play, I mean, I think there's a handful of dirty hands, and like Brandon said, there's a complete autopsy of it. But I mean, I'll say that I think his hands are dirty on that play. Like, you can't stand in the pocket for 4 seconds and not get a pass off. You just can't. Like, that's a lot of time. Okay, guys aren't open. You got to make something happen then. But I think that kind of illustrates what he is, though, as a quarterback. He's a guy you can win with, but you aren't going to win because of. And then in that moment, you aren't getting the win with effort from everybody else. You need the win because your quarterback goes and makes something happen, and he just simply is not that type of player. And that's why he's a $30 million quarterback and not a $50 million quarterback. He's just not going to elevate you in those moments. And it just is who he is. Like, it wasn't the structure, the plays called, and it didn't go to plan in a way that it needed to go for him to succeed in that moment, and he couldn't succeed. And it just kind of is who he is. So I don't think it was the greatest game for him. And I thought that last play was a tough moment for him. Even though, like B said, I wrote a story. You go through, there's a handful of people that weren't executing, but I still think that he's part of that problem.
For sure. No question about it. And look, I mean, we can't let the defense off the hook, even though the offensive shortcomings felt like what dictated this game, because we kept seeing they got across midfield they got across midfield 5 times. They had a 1st and 10 on their own 49, so they got like right on the cusp of midfield and got 1 touchdown and 2 field goals out of it. That felt like the story of the game. But the Rams basically scored a touchdown every time they got the ball in the second half. Yeah. They had 4 possessions, 3 touchdowns in the second half. They couldn't tackle, which has been a recurring problem for this defense. They did do a pretty good job against Stafford the entire game, but when he needed to hit some big throws, he did. He's a win because of quarterback.
Just like against the Browns, they took Myles Garrett off the board. Today, they took Cooper Kupp off the board, but it wasn't enough to get it done.
I don't know if they took Cooper Kupp off the board. I think Cooper Kupp just didn't get on the board. I don't think they took him off the board. There were things in their coverage that were, I was like screaming at the field, like, "Oh my God!" Like, why are you? There were opportunities there that they just didn't take, but they were there. I don't think they took him off. I refuse to allow that narrative to fly that they took him off the board. I'm gonna have to see more evidence of that. I don't think the stat line. Sometimes that happens, but I don't think that was because of what the Saints did.
They just didn't really have the ball. They only had 3 possessions in the first half and 4 possessions in the second half. 7 total possessions in this game, except for the kneel down at the end of the game. 7 total possessions. They forced 3 punts. They gave up 3 touchdowns.
Going back to the names that went out, Nick, you said the Tyron shoulder injury.
Not a problem.
Not a problem. Nothing too serious to worry about. Any update on Taysom?
Seems bad. Don't expect to see him play again. Ian reported too that appeared to be season-ending. I mean, there's only 5 games left, so any type of injury. But I think it's going to supersede that. I think it's going to be. I think there's a chance it's more significant than, just.
Yeah, we saw that helmet.
Yeah.
And then Saldivari, anything with that?
Nothing.
Nothing yet.